Hi all. Our notable game today continues on in the themed week, which is the Grand Prix Attack against the Sicilian Defence. So I hope you check out the underlying playlist. This was focused for Reddit. So this is my week on Reddit for the Grand Prix Attack system. And I believe a notable game of theoretical importance, which became later known as the Tal gambit after Mikhail Tal. And this actually altered the fundamental move order of the whole Grand Prix Attack system for a large majority of serious players. The game in question, 1979, Tallinn, a very, very strong tournament. Grandmasters Tigran and Petrosian were there, Mikhail Tal, Virginian, Bronstein, David Bronstein was there, Gilles Sachs, Rainer Knack. There was the British IM, William Hartston. For those of you who don't know, William Hartston, born 1947, currently 68 years old. He was born in London, England. He actually played in the North Circular Chess League Blitz. There's a photo of him playing in the Team Blitz tournament, which I play in every year. He was awarded the IM title in 1973. He was the British champion in 1973 after a playoff with Michael Basman, and 1975. So he played for England in the Olympiads at Havana 1966, Siegen 1970, Skopje 1972, Nice 1974, Haifa 1976 and Buenos Aires 1978. In tournaments he was third at Hastings 1972-73 behind Bent Larsen and Wolfgang Ullmann, and first at Sarajevo 1976. He is also a noted author and has appeared on the BBC television chess programmes many times. And more recently, of course, he's been on Gogglebox, a much more consumer-oriented program, which actually comments and annotates other programs. A very interesting, fun program that is Gogglebox. So William Hartston here was playing white against the legend of Mikhail Tal. And we must assume, players in the dynamic, aggressive school of chess, that Mikhail Tal is a bit of a tragedy, in that he was only world champion for 1 year. He had kidney problems, and he shouldn't have played the return match against Mikhail Botvinnik. This is very well known. But the knowledgeable chess world knows this, and his reign should have been longer, and any game examples and ideas he provides are listened to. In our virtual knowledge base of game examples and the evolution of chess style generally, his games are notable, extremely notable. And here he found a kind of antidote to the Grand Prix Attack system, which starts e4. It used to start like this, c5, and white playing now f4 immediately, not suppressing d5 from black. It's quite often the case with a lot of gambits that if black gets in a counterpunch in the centre, black's fighting for central control quite energetically and can often reach equality or even better. Here also, there's some fundamental issues with f4. It blocks in the bishop potentially. Potentially with this pawn structure, if the pawn moves here, then we have a nice blockade square on f5 as well. There are some fundamental issues which Tal's gambit kind of tries to exaggerate. d5. It's the main move now. It's considered the main move in Livebook for this early f4. So this is one of the reasons why knight c3 is the preferred move order now. If you're going to play f4, you play it, for example here, f4 is the fourth most popular option there. And let's see, if e6, f4 is the third most popular option here in Livebook. d6 is the second most popular option here, because black, by playing d6, doesn't really want to waste a move later with d5 generally. So it's even more appealing, it seems, in this position after d6 to play f4. But here, black hasn't committed yet, the d pawn at all. Playing f4, yeah, there's this energetic reply over 600 games in Livebook. White takes the pawn, because e5, yes, there's a blockade square on f5, and there's another Tal game which can actually demonstrate that, among other notable games, where black can actually stand better soon. But here, Bill Hartston played e takes d5. We have knight f6, So it's a temporary pawn sacrifice. And you might think, hold on a sec, why can't white just hold on to the extra pawn here? The move usually played in this position is actually bishop b5 check. If we try and hold on to the pawn, e6, and after d takes e6, bishop takes e6. Look at this bishop, it's hemmed in. Look at the d4 square. Black's control of the d4 square is pretty good. There's a kind of bind. If knight f3, knight c6, secure the bind on d4, and black is thought to be at least equal here. At least equal. This position here. Strong central control from black. This is not entirely desirable. And the philosophy of the opening was to try and get some kingside attacking prospects. This is not going to happen from this sort of position. More that the positional defects are being exposed with this pawn sacrifice. So yes, after knight f6, it's not wise to really play c4. It's further weakening that sensitive d4 square. Bishop b5 check is the main move. Bishop d7 is the main move here. Not knight d7. Well, that's not as popular. It's fought here. White should be okay. There's only a couple of examples with knight f3, believe it or not. c4 here might be more effective than earlier. This position is a little bit more effective and awkward for black. But even so, black should be okay even in this line. We're transposing to some of the same properties. This pawn is potentially a not very nice pawn to have blocking in the bishop, although it provides some key square support. But yeah, basically bishop b5 check. The main move considered is bishop d7 here. We have bishop takes d7 check now, and queen takes d7, encouraging white by double attacking d5 to play c4, encouraging white to play c4, and now e6. So this is the Tal gambit within the McDonald system. It's also, obviously, McDonald predates David Ruman's, the McDonald system. And you might wonder, who is McDonald? And I'll just do a quick reference check. The McDonald attack is after Alexander McDonald, who was between 1798 and 1835 an Irish chess master. He contested a series of 6 matches with the world's leading player at the time, Louis-Charles Le Bourdonnais, in the summer of 1834. So he played in the early f4, and so it's also sometimes called, the early f4 is sometimes called McDonald attack, based on games from that match. But anyway, okay, so here, after e6, we have queen e2 from William Hartston, trying to make things difficult for black to recollect the pawn. This becomes a real pawn sacrifice after bishop d6. So Tal has basically unleashed really a powerful opening pawn sacrifice, trying to expose the positional defects of white's position. Immediately hitting also the f pawn here. White plays d takes e6, and black doesn't want the exchange of queens. F takes e6, which can provide some dynamic pressure later on the f file. d3, black castles. Knight f3. And now the main move considered here in live book is actually knight c6, 33 games. Tal's a rare bird move, knight g4, as played in the game. On knight c6, for example here, rook a e8, this continuation where black plays for e5 is thought to be at least equal for black. Knight d4 here, this position, bishop g5, and in live book there are 5 games with knight g4, which is thought to be about equal, for example like this, where black should be okay, although white does have pretty knights. But the engines also come up. Stockfish 7 actually comes up with a move which might need some testing. It hasn't been tested in serious games. Very interesting tactical idea, knight h5 in this position. Black is actually playing for a small advantage here. And you might think, what is this? G4? There's knight d4 here, hitting f3 if this is played. This is dangerous for white. For example, like this. G takes, queen g4 check, knight takes f3 is nasty for white. And if knight takes d4, rook takes, e takes, and here, for example, white is overly greedy and getting mated. So yeah, the full wrath of the Tal gambit is revealed in these lines. Yeah, black's got f-file pressure, not white. This is not what you want to happen. So yeah, it seems knight h5 here is actually a nifty move in this position, knight h5. So that's good for black. But yeah, this whole line is very, very interesting. Just black playing knight c6 is the usual move in live book, knight c6. And it's just thought to be equal, even though black's a pawn down. So this is starting to explain the move order to knight c3. The historical precedent has been set back in 1979. It's a very important game. But yeah, in this game of Mikhail Tal, he played actually knight g4. And this has got some tricks associated with it. Some very nice tactical tricks. Knight c3 was played. We have knight c6 now. And probably h3 technically leaves white with a small edge, believe it or not, in this position. If h3 here, g4 kind of restricts the knight and countersacks a pawn. This continuation, for example, should be a little bit better for white. Black has that e6 weakness. White's king safety is okay. The knight here seems misplaced. So maybe h3 is technically the strongest move, but William Hartston just castled. He is countersacking a pawn here, and his idea wasn't just bishop takes, which should be okay. For example, like this. This should be an okay position for white. But he played actually queen e4. And yeah, looking to cut across here. And if Mikhail Tal played bishop takes c1, this position should be okay. Should be about equal. But Tal played a much more tricky move in this position. Can you see what Tal played actually? If I give you 5 seconds to pause the video. Black to play. So 5 seconds starting from now. Okay, the rooks are not connected yet. Queen d4 check was played. And yes, is the queen... can the queen be taken here, you might think? Well, Hartston took with his queen, actually. If he takes with the knight... Sorry, after queen d4 check, if he takes with his knight, black has bishop takes h2 check, king h1, rook takes f1 checkmate. Yeah, you don't want to do that. Not with the rooks not connected yet. They're not saying hello, hello yet to each other. Queen takes d4 was played. C takes d4. Bishop takes f4. D takes c3. And there are two pieces attacked. Well, the pawn is attacked, the bishop is attacked. White actually ends up here struggling a little bit for equality. He's a pawn down. White is a pawn down. Bishop d6. Rook f d8. c5. So white is now a pawn down after c takes b2. Rook a b1. We have b6 undermining the bishop, and it's going to have d3 after that. Rook takes b2. B takes c5. Bishop takes c5. Rook takes d3. Yeah, black is the one that's actually a pawn up. It's not entirely easy to convert this position though. White has good pieces in this position, at least. h3. Knight goes to f6. There are already some tricks in the position. If you look at White's active rooks and the a7 pawn, you might think, can the knight actually go back to e5? I'm not sure this is entirely possible. Let's have a quick look at this. It actually went to f6. If it goes here, this might be okay actually. If the knight takes e5, knight takes e5. If bishop takes a7, black doesn't have to take here and get mated. Black's actually got knight f3 check here. And this is okay. But yeah, so knight ge5 would seem actually about equal. If we have this position without bishop takes a7, just put the bishop back here. This position, the engine's indicating, should be about equal. Although black is a pawn up technically. But rook e2, this e6 pawn is a weakness. And this is going to be dead equal now. So yeah, the knight actually went back to f6. And we have rook c1. And again, there's some issues for black. Although he's a pawn up, this is difficult for black to try and win this. Rook ad8 was played. King h2. We have e5. If black didn't want to play e5, it seems quite a committal move. But if Mikhail Tal played rook e8, bishop f2, and the a7 pawn, you see that there's pressure on black's position, c6 and a7. So for example like this, white can just repeat. Yeah, there's enough pressure, it seems, for white to try and regain a pawn, for example, if black didn't go into repetition there. So yeah, Mikhail Tal committed to e5. We have bishop f2 hitting the knight, and that a7 pawn is protected by the knight. e4, and the game is settling peacefully now. In this continuation, white regains his pawn finally. Rook d2, rook cc2, avoiding any disaster on g2. And here they agreed a draw. And you might think, I was expecting Tal to win this. This is the Tal gambit in the McDonald attack system. Why didn't Tal win this? It was enough to demonstrate at least equality in this counterpunch system, this early counterpunch in the centre. He did do that, and his knight g4, a bit adventurous, was refined later to knight c6. The important thing also is to consider in the opening, this counterpunch, e5 is also problematic if it's not taken. So it's a very, very important counter system, d5. It's considered the main move in this position against the McDonald attack. So the modern treatment, the Grand Prix attack system, is usually here with knight c3. And unfortunately, even the great chess games.com, they call it Sicilian close when you look at classifications for the Grand Prix attack system. But whenever white commits to f4, this is really Grand Prix attack system, not closed Sicilian, which you'd associate with g3 and bishop g2. That would be closed Sicilian to me. But this is more definitely Grand Prix attack territory. But the early f4, the McDonald system, yeah, Mikhail Tal, his notable games are extremely notable and influence the evolution of chess practice. His examples are extremely important game example. And there is another important game example I'd like to show with Mikhail Tal playing black again, where white played earlier e5 instead of taking the pawn. So just to see the downsides of white playing e5 would also be interesting, and I'll reserve that for another game video, hopefully soon. So I hope you got something out of that theoretically, why knight c3 is important. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.